Welcome to the Forge and Foundry podcast. We've seen all of your requests to bring Tony back to the All-Me channel and to Man-at-Arms. This is how we're going to start. Tony's in LA and we're here in Baltimore, so we had to figure out some logistics to be able to do that. You're going to see the video quality increase as each of the episodes are released. These early episodes are just Tony and I talking about the creation of Man-at-Arms and the creation of our shops and how we started in blacksmithing. As we go farther and bring in our guests, it's one of those things where we know lots of people in the industry and lots of other blacksmiths, but we'd love to know who you'd like to see on the podcast. Please leave us a comment and let us know any questions you have and people you might want to see here. And now get ready for the Forge and Foundry podcast.
My name is Tony Swatton. You may recognize me from Man-at-Arms a decade ago, and I'm with Kerry Stagmer at Man-at-Arms Reforged, which is pretty epic.
Tony, you know, we ended up kind of taking over the show from you when you were phasing out with Man-at-Arms, but can you tell us how it started for you? Like, you know, what was the situation where the show came to you? Who came to you? What was the circumstances of, you know, what created the first Man-at-Arms?
Well, I'd already had a pending reality show between 2006 and 2009, basically about my shop, and I dress as a pirate or a Renaissance Lansknecht mercenary in armor, or you know, a Viking. I have a flash mob of Vikings, so we thought that'd be kind of interesting on the side, and all the pieces that I do. But that show didn't hit, and in 2012. I took my son for a bike ride on a tandem with a trailer with surfboards behind it, bicycling down to San Diego. So halfway down to San Diego, we pull into a hamburger stand in Laguna Beach, and I get a phone call on my cell phone from a guy going, you know, we want to do a YouTube show. I don't even say it was YouTube, internet show of creating these weapons. And he listed like maybe 10 or a dozen weapons, and 5 or 6 of the weapons he listed were ones that I'd made. He mentioned items from Zorro and Pirates of the Caribbean and, Hellboy and, everything. And so I'm like, yeah, no problem. I can do that. And he was like, well, you sound really cocky and arrogant on this. And I'm like, well, of the 10 pieces you talked about, 5 of them are ones that I've made that you've seen on film. So I said, yeah, I could talk about it. So this was in the summer of 2012. And by early 2013, we'd made a show, committed to doing 6 seasons of 6 weapons per show. What I didn't realize was the immediacy that we had to make them. And so I had 5 days with a one-man shop with a couple assistants brought in the end to make 6 weapons on camera. So Monday through Friday, I was working on those 6 weapons, all the forgings, the castings, everything, until Friday night when the camera crew left. And then Saturday, Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday, I would finalize everything and do final assembly on Wednesday, do the beauty shots, and destroy the pieces. So on the 40 weapons, because we did a few pieces when I wrapped up the 6 seasons.
Right.
And I'd suggested you guys, I was like, hey, these guys do the same thing I do, but just in the opposite side of the country. And there'll be some great continuity because their equipment's already blue.
Yep.
It was, in between Monday to Wednesday for the final assembly and beauty shots, I would be awake. I'd be awake for 40 to 72 hours doing the final assembly of this to do it on camera. If you look at some of the old Man-at-Arms where, I'm, presenting the hero piece or, chopping up something with it, I'm absolute toast. I mean, right. My eyes are bleeding, there's my, some serious baggage under my eyes,
Right. And you always did a lot more buffing and compound work. So people will definitely notice if they go back and watch your episodes that you're clean at the beginning and just filthy by the end. I mean, more so I think than a lot of people because of the type of buffing. I guess you're using some greaseless buffing compounds. And so you're just like a little green tint to your face and the whole bit, you know, it definitely shows the hard work.
Yeah, and if it was something that was a lot of cuprous alloys, if I'm forging bronze and buffing that up and nickel plating it and everything, I'm just getting immersed in, bronze or copper or brass powder, and it's sweating and it's permeating my whole thing. And the beauty, you could probably seen it with the white beards.
Oh yeah,
it absorbs. Verdigris.
Sure. Did we both have white beards when this started? I'm not sure that we did.
I think you were more of a ginger, but my beard had been white since my 30s. So it went whiter afterwards.
I'm sure.
The solar panel on the top of my head, that expanded to, but it was just a lot. And as you know, with your regular business supplying swords for plays and Renaissance fairs and collectors, I would generally have 20 or 30 feature movies going per year, plus episodic TV, plus video games, plus commercials. Yeah, and I was just, to turn down almost $250,000 job because I'm working for 2 weeks on something that, I generally didn't make money on them.
Right. And I don't think any of us really realized how big Man-at-Arms would grow, and that it would kind of continue to be something the way that it was. But, in those early episodes, was there, I say early, it's like you said, about 39 or 40 episodes, I guess, that you shot. Do you have something that was a particular piece that you really love? Like what's the stuff that you made at the end that sticks in your head? Like what Man-at-Arms weapon is Tony's Man-at-Arms weapon to you?
Well, one of my favorite ones was Gimli's axe. So I contacted Peter Lyon at Weta Workshops and said, "Hey, I'm going to
great.
Yeah, he's really cool." So, and I said, "Hey, I want to recreate this." And he says, just buy a United Cutlery licensed one. And we only made them out of resin or aluminum or aluminium, So we never did a pattern welded steel blade. So I forged that blade out of 128 layers of laminate steel. And afterwards, I proposed to my then wife with a ring made out of that material. And
I didn't know that either. Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah. So when we were in Delaware, the engagement rings we'd made for each other with silver lined Damascus rings before anyone really was doing that. I just thought it would be kind of cool. And she loved Lord of the Rings. So that would have been one of my favorite ones, making, Gimli's axe, because it was kind of cooler. There were some other ones. I mean, Long Claw was interesting because brought in Casey Lund, and we did a 2-core or a 3-core, interrupted twist kind of Valerian seal center core.
Right.
And forged that out and fullered it and forged the hilt and cast the bronze wolf head pommel and vitreous enamel the pommel and everything. So that one was pretty nice.
Yeah, that's cool.
And also Sokka's meteor sword for Last Airbender.
Right.
So they said, it's a meteor sword. And I don't know about you. From what I understand, you actually play some of these video games.
Yeah, I do. I know that you don't, but I actually play. We did a lot of League of Legends stuff on Reforged, and I play League of Legends pretty regularly. So, so the meteor sword was that you actually had Matt out there for that one, my brother.
Yeah, Matt happened to stop by, and on that episode or that season, I was doing Assassin's Creed Wristblade and the Meteor Sword. So I gave Matt, I set him loose with this 13 kilo Campo de Cielo meteorite. They're so ridiculously expensive now.
Oh, yeah.
And just chopped all that up and laminated that. And just trying to get a good forge weld, that was 512 layer laminate for the blade. So the guy from Nickelodeon who designed, who wrote that scene that it was a meteor blade came in afterwards. I mean, that's the convenience of being in Southern California.
Right.
The people would come in from Riot Games. I can't remember the guy who designed Leona's sword from the Zenith blade.
Yeah, that was
but he lost
a big
his
build.
mind.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so to hand him something based on something he had drawn, he lost his mind.
Yeah, we had the same situation with Dawnbreaker out here because Bethesda is here. And so we actually sent Dawnbreaker down to the Maryland Renaissance Festival because we knew that the designer was going to be down there that day so that he could, take pictures with and, handle the sword. So I thought that was pretty cool.
It's just watching them lose their mind. There was a guy from Blizzard named Nick Carpenter. When I finished with Man-at-Arms, I did another series with Blizzard called Azeroth Armory, where I made the weapons from World of Warcraft. So I made Gorehowl, this giant axe, and we had Nick Carpenter come in, and it brought tears to his eyes just to see something that he'd drawn and designed that's in a game to be able to handle it. It's pretty bitchin'. So.
Right. When the contact came to us, it was kind of a little roundabout because I think it was actually David Delagarde was putting together a team along with Matt, and then I think everybody realized that it was a really hard thing to deal with, and you kind of had to be an established shop, or just it was going to be super super tough. And that's when they came to Matt and said, "Do you think you can talk Kerry into being interested in this?" And a couple of the reps from Defy Media that owned the show at the time flew out, and we met. And it was definitely one of those things where I think we weren't actually interested at first. Because the reality TV has got a pretty bad reputation in some parts of the world, and we didn't want to be part of that. But it's just one of those things where we kind of talked it through, and the contracts looked right. And when we talked about money, they actually offered the same amount of money that you told me I should ask. And so
Good.
I thought it was all collusion. I thought everybody was talking to everybody. I think that wasn't the case now. I think it just happened to be that way. But it worked out. And the first season, they wanted to differentiate between our two shows. And so they wanted us to do these combination weapons. And the combination of them not being the same kind of IP and not being made by Tony Swatton was very hard on us. So those first 6 episodes were not received well at all. Although for me, the lightsaber katana combination weapon was one of the favorite things that we've ever made. I really liked that. But then when we hit that second season and we did the scissor blade where we made it out of a huge bundle of scissors and a couple of other ones that some stuff from Final Fantasy and things like that were received extremely well. And now let's take a quick break to hear about our episode sponsor, Displate. Displate are unique metal posters you can mount to your wall in just 20 seconds with no power tools. It's magnetic. The mounting system includes a wall protective leaf that leaves no trace when removing. Displates are manufactured in Europe, so it will only take 4 to 5 days to reach you. Of course, we love swords here at Man-at-Arms, but Kerry really enjoys sports cars. You will find all of your passions printed on metal: movies, gaming, comics, nature, music, history, and automotive. New brands and new collections are arriving every week here, so you might want to sign in to get regular notifications. It's even cheaper using the discounts available in the link in the description. So click on the link below to purchase your very own Displate today. Now let's get back to today's episode of the Forge and Foundry podcast. As soon as we pivoted back to the original concept of the show, there still was a lot of where's Tony Swatton? You guys suck. We want Tony Swatton back, which is, it's reasonable. It's a change. It's one of those things.
So, I mean, come on.
I mean, and they weren't all from you actually. So, no, it was one of those things that took a while, but that second season solidified us, and that was really great.
I like with the whole video game things, and right. I've never seen any of your episodes. I've seen little excerpts of it,
and I could take that in a bad way, but I also know that you don't watch movies and you don't play video games, so you're involved in so many of these things that I know you've never seen a lot of the things that you've made on screen, because that's not your thing. You're a book guy, and also having a large library in my studio, I can appreciate. Tony has a fantastic library of very, very rare things in his shop, and things that that teach us all how to create the things that we're making. Before there was an internet where you could just type it and look it up and kind of figure it out, you either had to know somebody or you had to dig really deep into old paper to figure it out. And so I know that's more your love.
Archaic French and German and Latin to understand some of these reference books from the 1800s.
Yep.
So, but I disconnected my television in 1997. So all of the popular TV shows of Buffy and Angel and Firefly and Alias, Charmed, I've never seen an episode of them either.
Right. Whereas I'm a media consumer, so when I'm sitting at my computer, there's more than one screen. There's there's a TV on. There's the music playing in the background, and I kind of doing everything all at once. And if I'm playing a game, I might be in a separate window. And so in that way, we're very different. But I came from a computer background, from the very beginning. So it was kind of different. Learning how to work with my hands was not second nature to me, but it was something that I chased pretty hard. But it was definitely that's one place where I think we're pretty different. I think that you were always working with your hands, whereas I was I was probably a late teens, early 20s before I really started creating things that way.
Well, I have machines that I created when I was in my early teens for the gem cutting that I incorporated to start knife making. But I can't run a computer. My phones break all the time. I mean, I'm very good with a hammer, but computers don't respond well to hammers.
Right.
So it's with all the 3D printing and CAD CAM kind of things. I like what you're doing with your CNC mills. I mean, that's so far beyond me. It's kind of crazy.
And that's really, I think that what creates that for us, that creates the importance to learn that for us, is not only that we want to keep up on some of that stuff, but we're producing large quantity on a regular basis all year long to supply Renaissance festivals. And so that's a pretty big difference, that's the basis of what we do. But on the East Coast, we wouldn't have the option. I mean, there are some movies on the East Coast, but nothing like where you are. That wouldn't really be an option for us to, I think, to have a viable business, to chase the same way that it is for you to do in LA.
Well, and it's probably better to cater to Renaissance Fair with the people that you have working to be able to delegate it. Whereas for the last 6 months, there's been no income for the film and TV business,
Right. And, I know that's tough.
And then the current location, I'm not on a, major thoroughfare as I was for 25 years in Victory, or as I was previous 3 years in Lancashire and North Hollywood.
And I mean, you get, like you said, you're in LA, so you have the advantage. There's a lot of people out there. I mean, is there anybody who came through your shop that really that worked on, let's say, part of Man at Arms that really left an impression on you?
I just met with the director and everything of the Metal Museum out of Memphis.
Yeah,
and they're rebuilding their museum. So I might send some of my man-at-arm weapons out there, or movie weapons, because I've got a lot of screen use pieces like Jack Sparrow's sword, Pirates of the Caribbean, and stuff similar to that, people would appreciate in a museum, especially with like Johnny Depp's DNA on it.
Yeah. Right.
So,
for sure.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, in my old shop, Don Fogg would stop by.
Yeah.
Supposed to have Steve Schwartzer come by recently, and
Steve's
he's a
fantastic,
phenomenal
man. I love Steve. He's so much fun. Yeah, it'd be great to have him on this show with us too. He'd really be great.
Yeah, he'd probably,
I'm sure
he's gung-ho.
Yeah.
Rick Furr,
Rick's out there. Yeah. Is that Door County Forge Works? Isn't that his
Door County, in Wisconsin.
So. Yeah.
And I mean, you and I are pretty well equipped with power hammers and stuff. And
but there's people who have bigger stuff than us. That's for sure.
Yeah, Michael Bondi's got a bunch of stuff.
Yep.
I mean, I've got a 200 kilo Bechet hammer that I'll be installing hopefully soon.
That'd be great. Yep.
Yeah. But I mean, I don't know if I think your Nazel 4B is still larger than a 440 pound ram weight.
That's big enough. No, it's about a 400. It's about 400. Yeah, but that's big enough, man. That's for sword making. It's way overkill. We did forge down some big billets. Now I have to remember which episode. Maybe Godfall. I think maybe the big sword we did for Godfall, which the billets were pretty substantial on that. Yeah, I think that may be the only episode that we have used the 4B on for Man at Arms. But
you sold the Beaudry, didn't you?
Yeah. So we have right now we have a 100-pound Bradley, a 165
Nazel 2B,
2B, a 4B, and then the big Pettingale number 2 that you talked me into buying. So,
have you used the Pettingale yet?
Very, very little actually. We ran it some during the hammer in that we do here each year, but not really since then because the overwhelming amount of work that we have for Renaissance festivals right now just takes up every moment of every day, basically. And
even with power equipment, Armourer is really not that profitable if you're catering to housers or whatever.
Yeah, I've bought a bunch of the big sheet metal tools because of my delusions of doing some car work, and I don't know, I got this thing in my head that for a short period of time I'd like to make some giant flowers, some large, metal sculptural flowers. I don't know if I'll ever get to it, but that was my excuse to myself. I need this piece of equipment if I'm going to do this thing. I'm sure you know all about that.
I've got an Echold 653 craft former that, it's like a $250,000 machine with another $200,000 worth of dies.
Right.
But it's 480 volts European cycle.
Right.
So I've had it for a year. I now need to get a transformer and get it operational.
Right. But at least you are doing the armor work. You are doing the sheet metal work. And, I pay attention to what's happening that year, especially if you're posting stuff. But so we see when you do all those crowns that you did for that, that opening, that was really cool. And, I guess you were doing some muscled breastplates at one point. Did you do a production run of them?
No, the muscle cuirass was for the last project I worked on, which was in May for a Ryan Murphy show about a gladiator. So made the helmet, breastplate, and stuff, and then production closed down when the WGA and SAG went on strike. So.
Okay, sorry, I didn't mean to bring it up that way, but
oh no, it was a cool build. Hopefully they use it and we'll see it come out. The crowns you were speaking about, that was pretty ridiculous. Got commissioned to make 100 crowns for Coming to America 2, I believe. Yeah, I don't know. 2. Is there a third? And so we had 30 days to make that. And that's a big order.
Oh, yeah.
And then by the time I gave them the prototype on the first day, they were like, we love it. We're going to make, can you do 250 pieces instead of 100? Like, called the water jet people, got another bunch cut up, came back in. By the third day, they were like, we want to increase the order another 100 pieces to 350 pieces, but we want it in 10 days. from, from 3 days before. So we had 7 days to put it all together. But with, the tooling I had for my fly press and my kick presses and mechanical bead rollers and everything else, it was, I could do 100 pieces an hour.
Right.
So in the end, it became 380 pieces, 375 pieces ordered and delivered by Thursday night. Absolutely toast. I mean, man-at-arms kind of exhaustion, faceplant kind of thing. And the next day they called up and they were like, these were for influencers. These were for, celebrities to get a gift from this movie. And they said, now, we forgot one for Snoop Dogg and Chrissy Teigen and John Legend. Can we get 5 more? I'm like, what do you think? I just pulled these out of my butt, Well, we had created 5 more, and we had them finished up. I was going to give them some of the crew that had helped me. So my client came by, and I said, well, where are you? She's like, yeah, I'm at Costco getting gas 2 blocks away. I'm like, come on by, I'll see what I can do. Handed her the 5 more. They paid a lot more for the last 5.
Right.
But 380 crowns in,
it's crazy.
10 days. It's absolutely.
And in some ways, that's a difference between our two shops is, we have a relatively static crew here all the time because the work is unrelenting all year long. Whereas for you, you're working, I know, yourself and maybe one other person a lot of times. And then when you get these jobs, you have this not clients, you have this group of skilled craftsmen that you can call and bring in. Because I know that sometimes it's like an army working there instead. So that's pretty neat. I mean, we do have some skilled people we bring in, mostly for man-at-arms when we do that, when Derek Kemper or Ellen Durkin or Rob Decker, we bring in some other people that have a pretty high skill level to help us finish builds. But our day-to-day is the regular crew that are also all really skilled artists. But, it amazes me when you have to do these like overnight or 3-day builds. I know the Bud Light armor situation for the Super Bowl was, I think, a big fast one for you, like you had to do it in a day or two. Oh, you got something sitting right there? You got a gauntlet? Yeah. Got the gauntlet? Yeah. Very cool. Yeah. So that was Super Bowl. So that was
so
cool.
The index finger is missing, but we got the middle finger, so we're good here. The pinky. But for this job, I had to take an existing suit of armor and cover it with 2 cases of Bud Light beer cans. And so that was pretty ridiculous. And that was probably, 5 or 6 days to produce that. Very absolutely insane. I've got another child suit of armor off to the side that I made for a McDonald's commercial. And that's my pièce de résistance masterpiece kind of thing. Not in the quality of what I did, but to produce an entire suit of armor to fit a, 5-year-old child.
Right.
16th century, kind of Renaissance armor out of aluminum in 96 hours. So at the end of which I couldn't move my right arm. My hand had crumpled up like this. I'd been stung in my left eye as a child and as a teenager. So my peripheral vision of my left eye went away. I kind of get a lazy eye. If you look at a lot of the reveal kind of showcases at Man-at-Arms, you'll see like this kind of, my left eye is, like I had a stroke.
Right.
And that had kind of happened with the end of this build at 4 days straight of just working through.
That's crazy.
And I'd injured myself in a long bike ride. I was on a tandem bike ride from Vancouver, Canada to Vancouver, Washington. So it's like 620 miles, and I got run off the road by a logging truck. So I went to an orthopedic doctor. My leg was swollen up like a watermelon and black and blue from my waist to my toes. And, I said, above and beyond this, what should I do? Like when I'm swinging a hammer, a lot of times my wrist and elbow will start hurting after I'm hammering for like 30 or 40 hours. What should I do? And he's just like, stop. The human body can't do that.
Right. Don't do that. Yeah. Well, it's going to have to do that. Right.
Yeah.
Very cool.
You're in my showroom in Burbank, California, where I've been making weapons since I was 15 years old. So I've got 45 years doing this stuff, which is kind of mind-boggling. I started cutting gemstones at the age of 7, and by 13, I was cutting stones professionally, doing silver work. And around 15, I met Jody Sampson, who created the Conan swords. And so I started making knives, stock removal, no actual forging or anything. And I was 16 or 17 and joined the SCA, the Society of Creative Anachronism, and started making armor. And soon after that, I got kicked out of my mom's garage because I was making a little bit too much noise and everything, and had to move to a retail shop where I was in from 1988 until 91. And during that period, I started working on armor for Michael Jackson, sculpture, metal sculptures, and stonework for Disneyland and Disney World. And I made the Hook for the movie Hook back in 91. So I moved into another shop and done like 300 movies since then.
So the shop that I first met you at, that was in Studio City, was that was your second shop?
The shop it was in Burbank. It's literally a block away from where we're being interviewed now.
Oh, okay.
I was in that position from 91 until 2016. In 2016, they sold the property, and I had 30 days notice to move 150 tons of machinery.
Right.
And 25 years of accumulated junk. And
So
stuff.
So all the man-at-arms that was shot with you was done in that one location then?
That wasn't in Studio City. It was also in Burbank.
I got it. So yeah, when I was out there, I didn't realize your two shops were so close together because, I'm out in that part of the world and somebody else is driving usually, so I wasn't familiar with it. But yeah, and I've been to your new location, and honestly, I'm sure that as it was for us to move BKS to this new location, it was a tremendous amount of work, and it takes a long time to get set back up and kind of get the feel again. But the new place that you're at is just fantastic. So I'm sure it's really serving you well. And I'm sure it was a pain, but I'm sure that it was a really positive move for you.
No, it's much more, helpful. And, we still kept the Baltimore knife and sword color scheme with the royal blue.
Yeah. So Tony and I actually have a lot of parallels in our lives. It's really pretty amazing because we didn't actually meet until Man-at-Arms was already going. But I think, there were some early times that I was aware of him, primarily as a knife maker. I had somebody who had a knife that he'd made for a Lance Connect unit at one of the California Renaissance festivals, Larry and Paula Paterka, and they had moved to Maryland, in the 90s, and had lost the pommel for that dagger, and that's kind of the first time that I'd heard Tony's name directly. So I was maybe aware of your company, but not necessarily you until that time period. And then, of course, my brother Matt was back and forth across the coasts, and that's kind of where we all kind of learned of each other, I think, at that point. When was the first time that you remember hearing about BKS, hearing about Baltimore Knife?
Probably when Matt visited my shop and he thought I was pranking him because everything was the same color as yours.
He did call me and send me pictures because it was pretty unusual for people to paint a lot of their equipment blue with yellow handles, and there were Tony's anvils painted exactly like I had things painted out here, and it was kind of surreal, really, to find another shop that was so similar. And Tony and I are very close in age, and we got started kind of the same way. Although obviously the LA life is very different than the Renaissance Festival world that's out here on the East Coast. But the time period is all very close, and I guess we were both. I left my job to do this full time in '87, even though I've been doing it for a while, and I think it's pretty close to the same time period for you, right?
I think we started right around the same year, 1987. I made some sculptures for Disney World while working on my mother's garage.
Right.
And in 1988, I moved to a location with Jody Sampson's ex-roommate Alex Collins, and we shared a shop. it was a little over 1,000 square feet in North Hollywood.
Wow.
And that's when I was doing all the film work started coming in, and was doing everything there. So 91 was the big year with doing Hook and, Michael Jackson's Armor and another sculpture build for Euro Disney.
Yeah, you were in it with both feet for sure, right from the very beginning. Yeah. So, yeah. Now, I know that you were born in England, right?
Yeah, I was born in Hammersmith, so it's kind of convenient.
I figured. Well, but I mean, so how old were you when you moved to the States?
I was 2 years old when my parents and my sister, my 1 year younger sister, immigrated to Canada, to Vancouver, Canada. And my dad couldn't get work there. He was a Rolls-Royce mechanic and an RAF, mechanic with
I never knew that. Yeah,
airplanes. So he came down to Southern California and was working at a Rolls-Royce dealership in Beverly Hills. And we came down to visit a non-existent uncle when I was 7 years old. And, eventually got legal, got a green card and citizenship and everything. But I went back from the north.
Yeah, that's really cool. It's funny, as often as you and I talk, I don't think I ever knew that anything about that or about your dad being a mechanic. That's really cool because car thing's big deal to me. So that's really cool.
And for me, my dad wasn't around in my formative years. When I was 11, we went back to England and we were living in Paddington and went to school there for a year. But because we had green cards, we could only stay outside of the United States for less than a year before we lost the immigrant status. So we came back at that point. And my parents divorced. My dad moved off to Florida. So I really didn't see him much when I was growing up.
Got it.
But it was really funny is I'd actually hired him afterwards, not realizing with his training at Rolls-Royce with the body shaping and, hand hammering.
Right.
Some of the armor stuff. Yeah.
That's very cool. Yeah. I mean, like I said, I've a big love of British cars and have been into that for a really long time. So that's kind of just another parallel for us in some ways, that's really, that's pretty fascinating.
Well, other than your fascination with cars and my indifference to them.
Yeah. So when I first met Tony, I said, do you have a car? And he said, no, I have a truck. I was like, well, that'll work. And he's like, but you'll have to drive if we do anything because I don't have my driver's license. I don't drive. And I was like, what?
And that still stands.
Yep. But you go into a shop. I don't know. I assume your new shop, which I have seen, but I haven't seen fully set up. In your old shop, there was a rack of bicycles, of very nice bicycles and tandems that you had for people who came out and people who would go riding with you. And I know that you would do a few different tours where you would go out for a long period of time on a bike. Although there have been a few pictures that have surfaced of you on roller skates.
Yeah, so in my high school years, I was going to a lapidary shop, to a rock shop, cutting stones for them. And that was about 3 miles away, and I'd roller skate to that location. When they relocated by LAX 25 miles away, I would take the bus there initially, but it was faster to roller skate or bicycle there. So I was doing about 250 miles a week roller skating over Sepulveda Pass to the rock shop that I was working at.
Yeah.
But that was in my 20s, and for fun then, I actually roller skated across Europe 3,000 kilometers. So that's, I look at it now and it's like,
well, but we are normal to us, I think. And I think that it's one of those things where, we have these kind of lives that, we talk about in some ways having parallels, but it's definitely something that is pretty fascinating that we get this group of people around us that have similar interests and somewhat similar lives, and it feels normal to us. But the type of things that we do, are not really kind of the normal thing. I think it's really funny for me. There is a sword maker in Scotland who has been around for a long time, same kind of time period as we have, and has done movie stuff. I think he made the the sword for the Princess Bride and things like that, and he drives the same exact model of car that I drive. Although I think that he's lost his license more than I have, but nonetheless, it's an obscure model of Jaguar, and it just seems very odd that another like known sword maker would be driving the same kind of thing. So there's kind of things where I think we forget that we're living very different lives than I think that a lot of people have chosen, where they chose a pretty easy path, because I'm sure you can relate to how hard our path can be over the years, but certainly enjoyable, and it's really great when you can connect with people that have like interests, and it's really pretty fantastic.
Yeah, our common interests are kind of funny. I was unable to go to Quad State to SOFA this year, and you were out there, and people were commenting and like, "Oh, did you see those metal forming armor stakes that Kerry Stagmer bought?" I'm like, "Yeah." One of those was mine. He bought for me.
Because there was a absolutely incredible set of chasing tools there that I ended up not being able to buy. They went to Pete Renzetti, which is great because Pete's fantastic. Yeah. And so I was looking pretty hard at the stakes, and it was really great to have purchased the one that Scott Langdon made. That you had touch base with Scott and made and checked in, and really,
right. I mean,
really
to have Scott Langdon's prototype one that I have, the duplicate here that I bought a few years before at Quad State at SOFA, and for you to get his original with his marks and dates on there.
And it might have come from the same dealer, actually, the guy who was there, because he had brought stuff with the intention of seeing you. I mean,
oh, okay.
Hey, I sent you pictures, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, and I egged you on, like, yeah, buy them.
Right. And I was not
that you need help.
I was not really settled on purchasing them until I was thwarted on my chasing tool purchase, and then I kind of lost my mind and bought all the big stakes that were there. But they had to either come to my shop or yours, and in this case, they came here, with some of them going in a box and coming to you. So. Yeah, it's really once again another thing that's fun to have people that have the same interests. So, but
right.
So, did you? I don't know this answer. Did you attend any college or upper level education stuff, or what teachers do you have? That kind of thing. Like, what's that past? I don't know that part.
My old training is either through watching Jody Sampson and another silversmith work, and then just trial and error, kind of making things. We're of an age that was prior to the internet, so
it's much more difficult.
Books were my way of learning, or experts in the field. As I mentioned, when you got the stake from Scott Langdon in the 80s, when I'd go back to England, I'd go to the British Museum and look at the Sutton Hoo sword that Scott had created, and drool literal gallons all over that display case.
He's the first person that I can remember hearing about that was doing, more complex welds in swords in the modern age. I mean, certainly there were plenty of guys. I'm from Maryland, so there's plenty of guys doing pattern welded stuff, and of course, Bill Moran was here and kind of considered the father of modern knife making in America, and that was all local for me, and those were all people that my father, my uncles all knew. So to see something that was more complex, like this sword that Scott did, being created, and seeing some of that was kind of like, that's the first person I remember really doing that kind of work. So it was really that for me, it was a big deal, like finding out that stake had been his, and that that he still he messaged me, and that he still really, it held a close place to him, in his heart, something like that he created.
Well, and if you think back to 2014, when your team and myself and another guy were demonstrating at Delaware for the Abana conference for the Artist Blacksmith Association North America. And all of my prepared billet to make my similar multi-core
that's right.
kind of Sutton Hoo piece disappeared. So I was just cobbling it together from the tailgate sales. I had a jackhammer bit, a bandsaw blade, leaf spring, and just
And
threw it together on the fly.
Did that disappear in your luggage, or did that not? Did you ship it? I don't remember. I just remember
I brought it out, and I brought it out and put it in the tent. And I don't know when we started our thing. Was it Thursday or Friday?
It might have been earlier than that, actually. I think we were in there probably maybe Tuesday. I think because we worked most of the week, I think. So
yeah, so it might have been Wednesday where I brought the billet and set it off to the side where I'd be working, because we were staying elsewhere.
Right.
And when I came back in the next day to start on the build, it had disappeared. So I'm like, God, I got to get my own stuff and make it work on the fly in a tent with borrowed tools so I walk in, and Scott had his team right at the front entrance, and he goes, "Hi, I'm Scott Langton." Now 5 years previous, I'd seen him in Seattle, and I was hanging out with Alfred Haberman, who basically trained Yuri Hoffy, famous blacksmith. I had Tom Joyce sitting around a table. I had the head of BABA, the British Artist Blacksmith Association, and the president of Abana sitting at the same table looking at my portfolio. But I just fangirled out over Scott. I couldn't talk to him.
Like I said,
he was walking by with his Hawaiian, surfing shorts and a Hawaiian print shirt and an inflatable orca that he was going to jump into the bay in Seattle at this event. So he's one of us. He's just a goofball. But for me, just knowing the caliber of his work, I just couldn't talk to him.
Right.
So 2014, when we're doing our demo, he comes up to me as I'm getting ready to start with found items. And he says, "I'm Scott Langton. I've got my whole crew. We're going to watch you and support you." And I'm like, oh, crap. And the weld stuck. Everything worked out. I mean, I bought that new Bader grinder that they brought out for me. Scott went to Doug afterwards from Bader and says, "I want the same grinder that Tony bought."
Yeah, that's
great. So it's pretty gratifying. And he's come out to my shop, and I've, when I was demonstrating at Quad State, I think I want to say it was 2021 or 2022. I don't know, whatever. It wasn't last year, so it would have been the year before. I told him, like, yeah, heckle me. As I'm walking with stuff, just keep me on my toes as I'm doing my demo.
Yeah, that's great. That's great.
Yeah,
it is really neat. I think that you probably feel the same way when we meet the guys who came, essentially came before us, and how fantastic they are to be around. Certainly Pete Renzetti is one of those people, and
with Samuel Yellen background,
all the guys out of the Yellen shop, and the people that are kind of like that. They are like we are, and they love what we do, and so it's intimidating. The first meeting can be very intimidating, but as soon as you get to know them, it's like, wow, these guys are fantastic, and they have reached a point that I think that you and I are just kind of rolling into, where we begin to feel this obligation to pass on that knowledge. It's no longer quite, I mean, we're still struggling, but it's not the same kind of struggle. And, to be able to impart some of that knowledge on some of the guys that are coming up, it really has a great return for us. And you can see it in the guys like Renzetti and people like that who just share and share and share and share. They're not trying to hold any secrets from anybody. They want to make sure that the secrets that they know go down generation after generation, and are kind of the correct, easy answers, instead of sometimes the internet feeds you the wrong thing. It's great that the internet is there, and it's so much easier to find information, but it is so much easier to find bad information. It's good.
And we both have like Wikipedia stuff, so we're noted authorities in our fields.
Yeah.
And I was filming something and plasma cutting, and I said, It's 400,000 degrees Fahrenheit. And they go, cut. I sent a PA. Can you check that? Because that number is, I just pulled that out of the air.
Right.
Come back and they're like, no, it's 400,000 degrees Fahrenheit. Yeah. I said, no, it absolutely is not 400,000 degrees. What was your source? And he said, well, we Googled it. And I'm like, okay, can you bring me your, what was it was in Wikipedia. I'm like, okay, what was the primary source in Wikipedia? 400,000 degrees, I guess, is a default number. I like 70 billion.
Yeah, right. You just made
pull out of the air. I was the primary source.
You were the source. It's a loop. It's a closed loop.
And then you run around with like Pete Renzetti or Kim Thomas or
Kim Thomas, fantastic.
Or Don Fogg, some of these guys that you really admire, and they treat you as equals. And we're like, whoa, it's like,
Yeah, they're what I can tell you that when it came to those chasing tools, Pete did not treat me as his equal. that was a hands off that purchase. But it's pretty fantastic set. So I'm glad to see he's got it.
What was there, like 1,000, 1,200 pieces in that set?
Yeah. Yeah, and they were literally a single set. It was not like a random pile. I mean, I certainly have a pretty big collection myself, but other than like a master set that I have that was created for somebody by Valentin Yutkov, everything else I have is kind of random. Whereas this set that Renzetti ended up picking up at Quad State was just really a spectacular master set, just spectacular. So I'll send you pictures.
I've seen them. You sent me pictures.
Oh, did I? Okay, I sent them probably while I was there. Yeah.
So yeah, those are cool. I mean, I don't know if people understand what a chasing tool is. It's basically a shaped chisel that you're going to hammer on the top of a hollow article to impart details into it. Kind of, like Valentin or Douglas Pryor or some of these other guys, like the Negrolis back in the 16th century, embossing this armor.
Right.
So Man-at-Arms was a very positive thing for me. At that point of the 200 feature films that I'd worked on, I'd never been credited. Nobody knew who I was. I was Hollywood's secret. Right. So Man-at-Arms kind of brought me to the forefront. And by the time I finished up with the 40 episodes, I think viewership was like 220 million views. I know with in July that year, I went to Comic-Con, and the Wolverine Claws had that episode had aired on Wednesday or Thursday. So by Comic-Con on Friday, when I was wandering around, I was just having fans coming up to me and just losing their mind. I mean, it was
right.
You understand. I mean, it's just like we can't go out in public without getting recognized,
especially in California. Yeah.
So Comic-Con was insane. So I'd get these great big 400-pound gamer come up and fanboying over me. Can I get a photo or an autograph?
Yeah.
And I would pick them up and cradle them in my arms to get the photo, and they would freak out because, a 400-pound man's not used to being hauled out over the, so that was pretty cool.
Yeah, that's very cool.
And one of my favorite memories of Comic-Con at that time, I was wearing a brown Utilikilt. And if you ever saw the crazy boots, the New Rock boots with the flames on that I would sometimes wear in Man-at-Arms. Yep. And, a ubiquitous head wrap and a Sword in the Stone T-shirt, walking through Comic-Con. And a friend of mine who now is a customer for Marvel, was cosplaying as Thor, buying something from a vendor. As I walked by, he saw me through the corner of his eye, and he chased me down the aisle. He wanted to get a photograph with me, thinking that I was cosplaying Tony Swatton. That's when you've made it.
That's
so funny. Yeah, so that was kind of cool. And then when I did get married and we honeymooned in New Zealand, we went to Weta Workshops, and the people in New Zealand were huge fans of Man-at-Arms. I got chased down all over the place. We took a helicopter to the top of Mount Cook to make snow angels, and the ice cavern guide recognized me. I'm all bundled up and, and he's like, I know you, you're a blacksmith. I subscribe to you on YouTube. It was just on top of a mountain, across the world, so pretty cool.
Yeah, that's very cool.
But yeah, I had other projects going. I finished up with my actual obligations and had some movies lined up. And one of the benefits of Man-at-Arms was the intellectual property that I knocked off, because none of this, I have all the weapons or most of the weapons here because the IP belongs to whoever it belongs to. It could be, HBO or, Disney or Warner Brothers or, whoever. So, I couldn't make it and sell it. The production team didn't get it. I kept it here. And I think you have the same thing with some of your weapons.
The vast majority of them, we have.
Yeah. So some of the companies saw me making that. So as you mentioned, you play League of Legends. So Riot contacted me and I made Katarina's, twin blades. And I think you did that as an episode too.
Yeah, we did. Yeah, we did that. So what did you make them for?
I made them for the campus. They're for Riot Games. Yeah, they're on their in their studio.
I didn't know
and
that.
Also, yeah. I'm kind of a big deal. I have many leather-bound books. People know me.
Yeah, and you were at I think, man. As we were getting near the as you were getting near the end of the episodes that you were doing, I guess you were doing a lot of the Capital One commercials, right? You were doing What's in Your Wallet.
Well, that was one of the jobs that I had to push back on because I was doing Capital One commercials. At that point, I'm trying to think of what feature movies I was working on, but I mean, there
was so much.
And if you're working to exhaustion for most of a month, because we would do a pre-build as much as we could to make this stuff to show it on camera, because it's just not possible to make some of these builds in the 5 days that were allotted to it. But like Frostmourne from World of Warcraft, that one was a huge build. It was in the final season before I did the ones to Tide It On, when they'd already contacted you, but they hadn't filmed anything yet. And that got me kind of back on Blizzard Entertainment's radar. And then I did another show, Azeroth Armory,
Yep. And how many? There were there's only 4 episodes of that, I think. Is that right?
Well, I mean, if you count the Man-at-Arms making Frostmourne, that didn't really count. But then we did Warglaives of Azeroth, Gorehowl, Ashbringer, and Doomhammer. And then we did another one with a cosplayer who's also kind of a model out at Blizzard. So we did some armor elements and gem cutting, so cool. 4.5. I wouldn't call the cosplay episode 5.
Yeah. Well, to jump back to Longclaw for just 1 second, you were talking about Casey Lund being in your shop. I don't know if I've ever said this to you, but I've only met Casey once or twice at a couple of places, but he is my favorite sword maker in the whole world. I love his work. I think it is absolutely fantastic. There is a guy who makes hilts who does work in Arizona and then comes out here in Maryland and works at the Maryland Renaissance Festival, and he mostly mounts Casey Lund blades. And so I get to see a lot of unmounted blades when he's out here working. And I got to tell you, I love his work. I think his work is fantastic.
The metallurgy that he gets into. So right now he's working in, he just experiments with some really interesting alloys, and the heat treatment and, is right on top of it. I mean, he tries to explain to me some of the stuff and I'm pretty aware of what's happening, but my eyes still glaze over, with the whole, L6 bayanite heat treatment. But you get something that weighs nothing that will retain an edge and have like a 60 Rockwell, but you can tie it into a pretzel and is absolutely weightless. So
they're just beautiful. They feel fantastic in the hand. and the craftsmanship is really top notch. I just, he is, like I said, he is my favorite of the sword makers, and I know a lot of really good sword makers, but just something about that work, that just really does it for me. So yeah, but it's really awesome to hear, that he was in your shop.
Yeah, I'll see him next weekend at a Renaissance fair. We'll be hanging out at a booth together.
Yeah.
So yeah,
very cool. Thanks for listening to the Forge and Foundry podcast, and special thanks to our sponsor, Displate. Click the logo to subscribe, or click one of the videos to see more here on the Baltimore Knife and Sword channel, or go to Almy and watch Man at Arms.